Please be seated. The court is now in session. For this morning session, the Chamber will continue to hear the testimony of the witness Sidney Schanberg via a video link from New York, the United States. And for the afternoon session, we will hear the testimony of a character witness, that is TCW 665. Ms. Sakalwati could report the attendance of the parties and individuals to today's proceeding. Sakalwati, Mr. President, for today's proceeding, all parties to this case are present. It's to be noted that Noon Chea is present in the holding cell downstairs, based on the decision by the trial chamber in relation to his health. This morning, we will continue to hear and conclude the testimony of Mr. Schanberg via video link from the United States. The witness is ready. And for the afternoon session, we will hear the testimony of TCW 665. The witness is in the waiting room to be called by the chamber. We also have a reserve witness, that is TCW 742. President, thank you. Hello, Mr. Schanberg. Are you ready?
Yes, I am.
Thank you. I will now give the floor to Noon Chea's defense to continue putting questions to this witness. You may proceed.
Good morning, Mr. President. Good morning, Your Honors. Good evening, Mr. Schanberg.
Good evening.
Yesterday we finished speaking about the day of 17 April 1975. I would like to go back to the night before the 17th of April 1975. And I would like you to have a look at your diary, page 61, on the very top of that page. That will be ERN 00898-269. And that entry on 16 April reads as follows, and I quote, "About half hour later, at 1 a.m., the news comes over the Agence France Presse ticker in the cable office that Sihanouk has rejected the proposal as unacceptable. He said the leaders of the Phnom Penh government," and then you quote him, "deserve nothing but the gallows. The prince said there was only one course open to the Phnom Penh side: raise the white flag and surrender." Do you recall, Mr. Schanberg, listening to that news, or can you tell us how that news or that report of Prince Sihanouk came to you?
It came to me and some other reporters who were there through our radios that we ran on batteries, and it was, I think, the BBC, but that's how we found out about it.
Do you remember if there was more reporting on this or more news on this? Did Prince Sihanouk explain in this radio broadcast why the Phnom Penh government deserved nothing but the gallows?
I don't remember in any detail that if he elaborated on why he was making these remarks, but it didn't surprise me
Why is that?
Because he obviously had reasons to support the Khmer Rouge. And I don't know that from him, but I know that other people have said that they'd spoken to him and he didn't want to lose his family. Some of his family had already died in the war.
Do you remember if in that same news broadcast Prince Sihanouk said something about Lon Nol soldiers or Lon Nol military? Something about what their fate should be?
No, I don't remember that.
Now going back again to 17 April and the days after, I would like you to have a look at page 72 of your diary. And more particularly the paragraph below, the first, not the second from below. That would be, Mr. President, ERN number 0089880. On the bottom of that page it says, foreigners who trickle into the embassy in subsequent days carry stories of bodies on the road, people who died of illness or exhaustion on the march, and also reports of executions. But none of the latter were eyewitness accounts. Would you be able to elaborate, especially, Mr. Schamberg, on that last sentence, that there were no eyewitness accounts? Would that be correct?
Not exactly. On our way in this convoy of trucks, when we left the city, we left it by a road that I'd never been on. And it was a road that came into the city. And there were bodies scattered, still not picked up, dead bodies. And so it was difficult to tell whether they were soldiers or civilians. But there were, let's say, a dozen or so bodies that I saw.
What I was actually referring to is whether you, in the days after 17 April, heard accounts of witnesses who had actually seen execution of Lon Nol soldiers or officials.
We weren't able to talk to people on the way out. So only after we got our freedom and we entered Thailand were we able to talk to people who had experienced negative happenings when or negative things they witnessed. Yes. But I myself did not witness those things.
On page 77 of your diary, on the top of that page, ERN number 008988285, you write, and I quote on the top of that page, a second-hand report makes the rounds of the embassy that the insurgents have executed 7 people, including Long Boret. Rumors like this will regularly sweep through the compound, but are never confirmed. And on page 91, the third paragraph of your diary, you describe a person called Henry Becker, and you write in the third paragraph as follows: Becker has some interesting things to tell. He says Khieu Samphan, the top Khmer Rouge leader, has not yet arrived in Phnom Penh. He says Long Beret has not been executed yet. Now I'm trying to find out what your knowledge was about fact and rumors in respect of possible executions of, on the one hand, Lon Nol soldiers or maybe even government officials, and on the other hand, the 7 super traitors. Did you ever, and that would be my more specific question, did you ever have credible reports from eyewitnesses, for instance, about their executions or these alleged executions?
Well, in the years that followed, I saw statements by Khmer Rouge leaders acknowledging that they had killed Long Beret and others, and Surik Matak. And so I took that I accepted that as a fact, since it was spoken by the Khmer Rouge Politburo itself.
I agree. But what about rumors about lower-ranking military officials or soldiers from the Lon Nol regime?
When I returned to Cambodia some years later, I met the families of people that I had known, who had worked with me, a driver named Sarun. And his wife told me how he was taken away and killed one night, and in the place where they were working. And she never was told, nor did she ask why they did it. She was too afraid. And so stories like that, firsthand, yes, people told me.
But these were accounts that you heard much later, is that correct? You didn't hear eyewitness accounts of executions in the days after 17 April?
No, I wasn't. I'm puzzled. If people weren't out in a refugee camp, I don't know how I would have been able to talk to them and gather such information.
Well, if I understood your diary correctly, people did come in the French embassy in the week after 17 April with accounts of events that they had seen. So I was wondering maybe if you had heard any direct eyewitness accounts of executions from people coming in the days after 17 April.
Are you asking about executions of government leaders? Are those the executions you're talking about?
Well, let's, yeah. I'm not specifically not speaking about the 7 traitors, or super traitors as they are sometimes referred to, but alleged executions of, in general, of Lon Nol military or officials.
I don't remember anybody telling stories like that. Some people told us how they were forced or brought out of their houses and told to join the rest of the population in miles away in the countryside. No, I did not hear any. The answer is really no.
Then another subject. Did you hear in the days that you were at the French embassy reports, maybe from UN officials or from other people connected to NGOs, about the way that the refugees who were living in Phnom Penh left Phnom Penh on 17 April and the days after?
the people, the NGOs and other people like them who were in the embassy didn't know any more than I did. They saw what I saw, and they were moved out of Cambodia. So the answer is no.
Let me ask a little bit more about the situation of the refugees, and that would mean that we would go back in time again, leaving the 17th of April. And I would like you to have a look specifically at page 5 of your diary. That's an entry of 7 January 1975, ERN 00898213. And in the first paragraph of that page, you write as follows. An embassy official estimates that 40,000 to 50,000 new refugees have been generated by this offensive. Already it is generally agreed half the country's population of 7 million have been uprooted by the war. It is one of the basic statistics here. Another is the 5-year casualty toll, nearly 1 million killed or wounded. And there are tens of thousands of widows and orphans. Hordes of the orphans have become beggars, as have hordes of war-maimed soldiers. And after 5 years of thinner and thinner diets, malnutrition has struck, especially at the young, and dozens of malnourished children with concentration camp bodies are dying daily. Would you, Mr. Jambek, be able to expand more on those statistics? What was your source of these numbers when you wrote them down in your diary on 7th January?
The source is, as I wrote it, the first figures came from embassy officials. That meant embassy officers from several countries. Everything else I witnessed myself. I witnessed infants who were suffering from malnutrition, and I witnessed them die at places where they were treated by an NGO and so forth. And so all of the rest of the deaths that I saw while I was still in Cambodia in that period were things that I had witnessed myself.
That I understand also from the entry of your diary, but I would say that refers more to the second part of that paragraph. But in the second sentence of that paragraph, you write, already it is generally agreed half the country's population of 7 million have been uprooted by the war. It's one of the basic statistics. Now, when you write generally agreed, what do you mean?
I think that I can answer that by saying those people who had information, mostly people in embassies or in NGOs, told us what they had found out from what you might call bush. Well, it was word of mouth that they had heard or seen. That's where the information came from.
Would you be able to recall if you saw reports or any other information indicating the estimated amount of refugees who were living in Phnom Penh in the months before 17 April 1975?
No one who was living there at the time would need a document to tell him or her that there were new people in Phnom Penh and that the population had doubled and maybe more. The population before the war was about 1 million, and now it was 2 million or more. People were living, maybe 20 or 30 people were living in apartments or houses that used to hold maybe the eight people of one family.
I'm mindful of the time, so I will move on to another subject, and that is an entry in your diary, Mr. Schamberg, on page 75. That would be ERN number 00898283. And in the middle of that page, you describe a discussion which was going on apparently at the compounds of the embassy. In the middle it says, and I quote as follows, "Several of us, watching from the front gate, discuss the insurgents' probably reasons for this astonishing emptying of the city. It is a way of cleaning out any possible pockets of armed resistance, some say, and of searching for government officials who had gone into hiding. Others suggest it is a way to avoid the impossible task of feeding a refugee-swollen city of over 2 million people at a time of extreme rice shortage. They push everybody out and start fresh, and then they blame any deaths from the march or any other immediate problems on the old regime," someone says. It goes a little on, goes further. Do you remember writing this, and if yes, when exactly did you write this?
I wrote this, as I testified yesterday, from the notes in after I came out of Cambodia. From the notes I had taken at that time, while I was in the country, and that's how it got into the diary.
And do you remember the actual discussion that you had with the people that you are referring to?
Yes, that's what I remember. It's what I wrote down.
And some of the arguments that you have written down, are you able to tell us if they somehow were corresponding with the things that you had yourself observed?
They did correspond to the things that I had observed, and but not every incident. But yes, I had observed similar things.
And especially what some people seem to suggest, that that it was a way to avoid the impossible task of feeding a refugee-swollen city of over 2 million at a time of extreme rice shortage. Was that something, were these observations that corresponded with the things that you had seen yourself?
Yes.
Would you be able to expand your yes as to reasons why?
If the Khmer Rouge wanted to feed the population of Phnom Penh at that time, they could have opened the Mekong, which they had blocked off.
But that seems to be a reason not supporting this argument, or am I wrong?
Yes, the argument that they ordered the evacuation in order to feed the 2 million. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, yes.
Yes, I think that was a false explanation.
But that's your opinion.
No, I explained why it was my opinion. They controlled the river, and that was the primary supply place where they usually got their food and other medicine, etc.
Let me, if you allow me, try it from another angle. Do you remember who it was who suggested that it was a way, the moving out people, to avoid the impossible task of feeding a refugee-swollen city of over 2 million people at the time of extreme rice shortage? Who was it that was suggesting that?
As far as I can remember, that came from the Khmer Rouge and people who supported the Khmer Rouge, saying that that was the reason that the city was emptied. And I am saying that didn't, to me, make any sense, because all they had to do was stop blocking the Mekong River that came from Saigon to Cambodia, because that's where the ships brought in the supplies.
When you say this suggestion came from people who were supporting the Khmer Rouge, or maybe from the Khmer Rouge itself, are you maybe referring to two people who also at one point came to the embassy, two people called, and I refer you to page 89 of your diary, Chu Meng and Shane Tar?
What paragraph are you at?
I'm at page 89, the second paragraph. There you write about two new arrivals at the embassy, Chu Meng and Shane Tar.
Yes. They entered the embassy. She was of Chinese extraction, as I remember it. He was an Australian. They told us when they came in that they had tried to join the group going into the interior to begin this so-called sort of food growing campaign, and be able to feed them. They told us that the Khmer Rouge officials said they appreciated their offer, but they could not protect them, and they told these two to come and take refuge in the French embassy.
Do you remember anything about the reports that the two of them made of the things they had seen prior to them entering the embassy?
I don't remember any details, because they didn't go very far. They went 10 or 15 miles, and they didn't tell us anything about what was going on except for the evacuation.
What do you remember that they did say about the evacuation?
They said it was a legitimate thing to do. They were supportive.
That's what they might have been saying as an argument. What do you remember of them having making actually accounts of the things they have seen? Do you remember what they told you that they had seen in the days before they entered the embassy?
They were only away for about 2 days. And no, they did not tell us anything about what they saw. They said they supported the evacuation, and they said that that people in the embassy who are who saw the Khmer Rouge as a destructive force were wrong, and they were supporting what the Khmer Rouge were doing. I have no memory of any details they told us about what they saw.
Do you remember, or do you know, rather, if they wrote or drafted or wrote a report on the things that they have seen in the days and weeks after 17 April in Phnom Penh?
No, I've never seen anything that they wrote.
Yesterday I was referring to criticism on your reporting, and part of the sources of that criticism coming from Noam Chomsky on your reporting is based on a report that those two individuals have written. Are you aware of the discussion, or do you know about the discussion on your reporting where people like Chomsky are referring to the reports of these two individuals?
No, I'm not aware of that. I never saw that.
They are, for instance, saying that they and then I will go especially to the part of looting. They say that they never really saw any signs of organized looting or other forms of looting in Phnom Penh. Do you remember speaking to them about looting in Phnom Penh?
Mr. President, if I may be heard.
The President. Mr. Prosecutor, you may proceed.
I'm not rising to object, but merely to request if my learned friend could supply the information as to the source from which he is reading so that we can all be familiar with it. Thank you.
Yes, I would be able to do that. I'm referring to a document D39942, ERN number S000045507. More specifically, S000045594. Mr. Shamrock, I'm sorry I didn't get your answer. Did you say you didn't remember speaking about any about looting or their reports about what they saw in Phnom Penh?
I had a couple of conversations with them, and they said that everything that we had seen wasn't true. And at one point, both he and his girlfriend threatened, because we disagreed with them. They said they were, if we continue to disagree with them, they were going to report us to the Khmer Rouge leadership. And the reason this conversation with them was negative was that we had asked them to do what everybody else was doing, and that is to chip in and do the chores that had to be done, cleaning up as we woke up in the morning and getting whatever food we had, which was rice primarily. And they refused to take on any chores. And they were being fed like everybody else. And that was when I remember, especially the woman, saying that we'll report you. And I said, do what you feel you have to do.
In the report that I just referred to, they wrote that, and I quote them, "For most of the time we spent in the French embassy, we were the object of abuse and fear by those who had nothing but contempt for the Kampuchean people." And it seems that they were referring not only to John Swain, but also to you. Now, would you be able to tell us, on the basis of your encounters and discussions with them, why they would write that about you?
Because obviously they were supporting an event that was full of bloodshed and lots of lives. We witnessed lots of lives being lost. The night before they entered the city, I spent several hours at a hospital where victims were being brought in, people who got amputees, children. I spoke to them. I asked them what happened. They told us that they were victims of the Khmer Rouge, the fighting. Bodies were piled up. The floors were slick with blood. The doctors at that point didn't have any more gloves to do surgery and cleaned their hands in alcohol in a bowl after every surgery. And outside the surgery office service, the surgery rooms, you would see cardboard boxes with limbs thrown in them, because the limbs had to be cut off. And it was a hellish scene. And it was real.
That might very well be. I have never been in a war, as you have indicated yesterday. You are just merely now describing, it seems to me, the victims of a war. And that might not be any different than the casualties that we are seeing right now in Syria, for instance. So that still doesn't explain the negative feelings that these two people seem to have about you and the things that you have been saying to them in those days at the embassy in Phnom Penh.
That is something you may believe, and I would suggest that you don't go to war, but you go to Cambodia and talk to the people who survived. But that's up to you. But nothing that they told us was supported by anything we had seen.
Another thing, what Tar and his wife have written is, when it became clear that we had no sensational stories to tell of mass executions, rape, pillage and suicides, many of these journalists became quite disappointed. Do you have a comment on this observation?
I'm sorry.
That being said,
if I may be heard, Mr. President. Thank you. Just a point of order. We're trying to follow, to keep up with my learned friend. He indicated the document that he's reading from is authored by Chomsky. It appears to be a note on Chomsky, looking at the first page. I'm not sure about the veracity of the document. It is not an official publication. If he's able to provide further information about what this document actually is, and then take us to the specific page so we can read it, and be satisfied that these words are indeed being attributed to this couple. It just seems a little bit hazy at the moment as to who said what and at what stage and to whom.
I understand the prosecutor's observation, but on the other hand, I was passed a note that I have overstepped my time and that the Kyosampan team would like to start their questioning. So I presume I have to wrap up my questioning, and I will be very happy to give details after this hearing.
The President, I hand over to Judge Silvercartwright.
Thank you, President. Could you just give us the details now rather than waiting till the end of the hearing, please?
Of course, Judge Cartwright. I actually mentioned already the relevant ERN numbers. My last quote came from S00455593. It's page 83, indeed, on a note in relation to a note on Chomsky, it is called.
Could I have the D number again, please? Because I'm not familiar with an ERN number starting with S.
Is that Cartwright?
Yes, Mr. Schanberg.
S00045507.
The D number.
Sorry, I apologize. D39942.
If I can be of some assistance, that number, my learned friend may not be familiar with it, but this is it appears to be a DC cam number. It's in the top right-hand corner. This is why the format may not be familiar to Your Honours and perhaps others in court. We don't have a document number for it. It appears to be in the shared materials drive, but it's a document that everybody's able to see, at least. Thank you.
The President. Thank you. Now I hand over the floor to the defense team for Mr. Kyosampan to put the question to the witness, Mr. Schanberg. You may proceed. Counsel Kung Sumon. Thank you, Mr. President, and good morning, Your Honours, and good morning to everyone, and good morning to Mr. Schanberg. My name is Kung Sumon. I am the defense counsel for Mr. Kyosampan. I have a few questions to put to you. I would like to begin with the period before the Democratic Cambodia period. You said prior to the Khmer Rouge period, you came to Cambodia between 1970 to 1975. Could you please enlighten the court as to how long actually you stay in Cambodia?
Well, each trip I took was a different length, but my visits were never less than 2 months.
Could you come up with the entire period of time you stayed? For example, how many months did you stay in Cambodia for the period of 5 years when you were in Cambodia?
It's an estimate, but I would say a little more than 2 years, maybe 2.25 years.
Thank you. Aside from the time you spent in Cambodia, you were working outside Cambodia, during which did you report anything about the event that unfolded in Cambodia at the time?
Repeat your last sentence, please. Did I do what?
Thank you. My question is that aside from the period you stayed in Cambodia, when you were working outside of Cambodia, did you ever report or write anything about the event that took place in Cambodia from outside Cambodia?
I might have, but it was all in notebooks that were records that I prepared or made while I was there. So on any given day, if I came out of, let's say I came out of Cambodia after 2 months and went back to India, where my base was, maybe in a day or two after that, but I don't remember any particular story like that. But I may have written a story about my last days on that visit. Yes.
Thank you. Concerning your report of the events that took place in Cambodia between 1970 to 1975, did you ever capture the information in the battle in any part of Cambodia then?
Yes.
Could you enlighten the court as to which battlefields you were covering at that time?
There were several stories that I wrote about battles that I witnessed, and I went to those places because there were reports of fighting, and I went and witnessed it. The whole country was not available. There were some places that were really cut off because they were Khmer Rouge controlled, and the Khmer Rouge had already.
My apology, Mr. Schanberg. I don't think that you are actually answering my question. Let me try to refresh my question. I would like to know the exact location of the battles that you wrote the article about. Could you please tell the court the specific location? I would like you to tell the court the location first of the battles, and then I will ask you the details of the battles later.
I can't give you precise dates because I don't have that in front of me. And but if you were to read all of the stories I wrote for the New York Times on my visits, from my visits to Cambodia, you will find the names of those battlefields, and there's no secret about it. And they'll be there if you Google my name and you put the battles or something, you will find them.
Sorry, Mr. Schanberg, because now you are testifying before the chamber, so I would like you to answer my question according to what you can recall and what you witnessed at the time, and if you cannot recall it, you can simply say so. Thanks. Now, can you please clarify again to what I have understood you? You do not recall the exact date or location of the battlefields. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. I wrote stories every day or every other day. All of that information is there, and I don't have. I don't want to start out saying I think it was February or I think it was the name of the province. I don't want to give you an answer about guessing. I'm just suggesting you can find it. And I'm sure that you won't have any difficulty.
Thank you. Now, I would like to ask you about the details of you going to cover the story in the battlefields. Did you go along with the forces of the Khmer Republic? Because you say that in certain areas it was cut off because it was under the Khmer Rouge control. You did not have access to that area, so you had to go through the forces of the Khmer Republic. Is that correct?
I never went to a battle accompanied by the government soldiers or government officials. Reports would come into people, refugees, would tell us of battles taking place, and we would then go to following their information, go to those places and witness those battles.
Thank you. Concerning the bombardment of American forces, did you ever cover the story concerning the devastation caused by the bombardment of American forces in Cambodia?
Yes.
Thank you. Could you please enlighten us on your article entitled Cambodia Diary 1975? That was your own diary on page 5. On the 7th of January, you mentioned the numbers of casualties and the wounded. It amount to approximately 1 million or so. Where did you get this figure from?
This figure came from a lot of reporting, talking to soldiers, embassy soldiers who had gone on air patrols to witness these things. That's where that came from.
Thank you. Did you actually see a chart or the table of the assessment regarding the total number of those who were killed or wounded at the time?
No, I saw no lists of that.
Regarding the source of that information, for you as a journalist, What was the reliability rate of that source of information that you quoted?
I never used anything told to me by anyone who had given me exaggerated or wrong information before. So I believe my estimates are very close to the actual numbers.
បាទសូមអរគុណខ្ញុំសូមសួរលោកអំពីទំនាក់ទំនងរវាង
Now I would like to ask you about the relationship between the Khmer Republic and the United States administration.
តើលោកបានធ្វើសេចក្តីរាយការណ៍ឬក៏យកព័ត៌មានអំពី
Did you make a report regarding the relationship between the Khmer Republic and the United States government? And if so, how frequent was your report for the period between 1970 to 1975?
I wrote many reports about the relationship of the American embassy and what it was doing there, and reports of the American bombing. And so I think you will find again, if you look under my name in the New York Times library, you will find all of those articles. In fact, there were times when the bombing took place not very far from Phnom Penh, and we watched the bombing from rooftops in Phnom Penh.
បាទសូមអរគុណលោកបាន
Thank you.
បញ្ជាក់អំពីទំនាក់ទំនងផ្នែកយោធា
You also mentioned the military relationship between the Khmer Republic and the United States.
ឲ្យលោកបញ្ជាក់ថា
And
តើមានទំនាក់ទំនងអ្វីផ្សេងទៀត
can you also tell us about other relationships between the two governments in terms of diplomatic relationship, for
សាធា
instance,
រណរដ្ឋខ្មែរត្រូវការរដ្ឋាភិបាលសហរដ្ឋអាមេរិកដើម្បីជួយ
that the Khmer Republic actually needed much assistance and support from the United States government?
Yes, I think the relationship was existed obviously, and supplies and arms and other things were brought in from the American government. That's really all I know about that.
Thank you.
ដែលធ្វើបទវិចារណកថាផ្នែកសារព័ត៌មាន
Had you ever made a presentation regarding the independence of the Khmer Republic in between the period of 1970 to 1975?
Can you explain what you mean by the independence of the Khmer Republic? What did you mean by the independence?
What I want is that did you write an article or you try to get information regarding the independence status of the Khmer Republic for the period during 1970 to 1975. Independence here, I refer to Cambodia as a sovereign country and not an umbrella to a United States.
I don't have any secret information about the relationship between the United States and Cambodia. And it was not a long, it was not, how should I put it? It was not a long-standing relationship. And only the people who made the decisions to support the Lon Nol government you'd have to ask people who were running the United States government at that time and what their motives were and so forth. But you will find also in my articles, if anyone could possibly go through them, you will find references to statements sometimes from people at the embassy about decisions that were made. But I don't have in front of me all those articles, and there's no good result from just trying to remember each story and the details in it.
Thank you. I'd like you now to look at your diary once again on page 54. In the fourth paragraph. Mr. President, I would like to read this text in English as it exists only in English. President, yes, you may do so, and the interpreter, please be ready to switch your channel. Here is the quote.
One leading Cambodian figure, Lieutenant General Sisawat Sirimata, a former prime minister who was once regarded by the Americans as the only hope for reversing Phnom Penh's fortunes, has sent a telegram to President Ford accusing him of betrayal. The general, in his cable, first recalls the good memory of a meeting he had with Mr. Ford in Vail, Colorado, some time ago, and then says, your policy of abandoning of a poor country decided brutally without warning or preparation put us in a position of heartbreaking betrayal. We will struggle now alone without your support. We will die on our soil, achieving our last desire, to die in freedom. I lay on the American conscience all Khmer debts, present and future.
Mr. Sandberg, in this text that I just read from your diary, have you actually read it?
Yes, I have read it, yes.
Can you elaborate a little bit further regarding this communication by General Sirimata?
Sirik Matak was a man that I respected. He was no longer a major force in the new government, the Lon Nol government, and a lot of what he says I find to be appropriate.
Thank you. Can you tell us if you actually know the purpose of that letter?
Well, since I didn't write the letter, and I was not a close friend of Sirik Matak, I don't know how I could answer that question. Those are his thoughts, and I have commented on them in response to your question.
Thank you. Can you expand the phrase that is used in this text, that is, quote, to die in freedom, end of quote? President, Mr. Schenberg, please wait. The prosecution, you may proceed.
Mr. President, the witness just said that he can't speak to the thoughts behind the letter. He didn't write it. It was written by a different individual who was subsequently killed. As to what particular words in the letter were intended to mean is clearly beyond the witness's knowledge, and the question should not be allowed.
Counsel, thank you, Mr. President. What I aim to get is that although the letter was not written by the witness, but it is part of the text in the diary of the witness, it therefore means the witness understands the text. For that reason, the text has been included in his diary, and it is my understanding that he can elaborate further on the point in the text. President, the objection and ground for objection by the prosecution is appropriate, therefore sustained. The witness, you are instructed not to respond to the last question put to you by the National Council for Nuon Chea. And Counsel, you may move to another question. Counsel, thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Schenberg, please refer to page 41 of your diary. That is for April 11th. It is in the second paragraph below the April 11th. Once again, Mr. President, I will read the quote in English. President, yes, you may proceed.
Mr.
Mr. Schenberg, here is the quote from your text.
The Cambodian ambassador, Sim, in a speech to Washington Press Club, says, You have found our case is hopeless, but we have to cling to life until we die. Let's face it, you took advantage of us, our inexperience. As you are much cleverer than we are, you could induce us into these fightings.
Question. Mr. Witness, could you tell us how did you get this report, and did you also make a report regarding this speech?
I do not remember inserting this quote in an article. I don't know where I heard it, but there we as a reporter, I found these things in other, on the internet or in the papers that I saw. I saw this sentence in a reliable newspaper, and I don't remember if I used it in a story. Again, you just have to comb through my writings. But these are my writings, so they're included.
Thank you. Did you learn of any information, or did you report regarding the reaction by the United States government to the statement made by this person, Sum?
I don't remember. I may have. It looks like something that I might include, but I can't give you an exact answer. Again, you would have to go in about that time, the April 11th, and look at a few days in that period, and then you would find if I had written about it.
Thank you. Regarding the drafting of your diary, you stated that it was written in Cambodia, and then you edited it after you left Cambodia in 1975. My question to you is related to the first writing. Did you make a lot of changes during your editing of your first draft?
No. What I testified to was that my editors had asked me to keep a diary. I did not keep a separate notebook for that. I put the notes in my regular notebooks. I did not write the diary until I came out of Cambodia. And I explained, I believe yesterday or the day before, that by the time it wasn't published before the fall of Phnom Penh, and I wrote long pieces about the fall of Phnom Penh, and so the editors decided they did not need this diary. But I wrote it in Bangkok when I came out of Cambodia in 1975.
Thank you. Do you actually have in your position the first notes that you made so that the trial chamber can compare this existing diary to your original one?
No, I never kept a record like that. Again, I could try to find some of my notebooks, and then you could compare them to what's here. But I had no reason to, when I made a notation that this was for the diary, there's no reason that I would change it in some, some meaningful way. It's just what I wrote in the notebook.
Thank you, Mr. Schanberg. I now conclude my question time, and Mr. President, I'd like my International Council to continue. President, yes, International Council, you may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning to the Chamber and the parties, and good day to you, Mr. Schanberg. My name is Anta Gysi. I am a co-international lawyer for Mr. Kyosompon, and as such I have one or two further questions to put to you today. Are you hearing me well, Mr. Schanberg? Good. My first line of questions is connected with your experiences as a journalist who is accustomed to working in war zones. I've been following your testimony, and I have understood that apart from the conflict in Cambodia, you also followed the Vietnam War. Have you reported on other wars apart from those?
Yeah, the answer is yes. I covered the war between India and Pakistan. Excuse me. I covered the war in 1971, I believe. I think I have the date right. I covered the war between India and Pakistan over Bangladesh, and that too is all. I wrote lots of articles, and you will find them in the New York Times, in their collection.
So as to enlighten the Chamber, we need information. Sometimes the questions that we put to you may seem a little bit simplistic, but what we need is testimony and proof from you. So allow me to apologize in advance if occasionally the questions do seem to be a little bit basic, but what we're looking for is clarification. So, as a reporter in countries that are in conflict, can you tell us if, in terms of the sources that you turn to, there are special precautions to be taken? Allow me to explain. You said, when you were in Cambodia, for example, that one of your information sources on the advancement of troops on one or the other side was the US Embassy. And so my question to you is that apart from the US Embassy, what other sources were you using to garner information about troop movements, possible negotiations, and diplomatic positions? Can you help us with that, please?
Yeah, there were other, first of all, there were other embassies, the British Embassy, the Australian Embassy, the Japanese Embassy, that kept their own watch on the war, and a reporter talks to these people, and I talk to these people, and I have to make a decision as to whether they are talking, whether I believe that their information is accurate and so forth. And that's why it's a profession. And then I write what I think I found truthful or complete. And I also talked to officers in the Lon Nol Army when I would go out and report on battles, or when I might meet them in Phnom Penh. And so that's, aside from the things that I witnessed myself, that is how I gathered information from, let's say, people who were keeping track for themselves.
From your testimony so far, what I have understood is that the sole military sources that you had were on the American side or on the Lon Nol Army side, because it was not possible for you to go into the liberated zones. And so my question to you is, when you were there in Phnom Penh, did you have any contacts with friendly parties, friendly to the Khmer Rouge, or with FUNK sympathizers?
Yes, but only through. I didn't have any direct connection with them, but some other people, not necessarily reporters, who did make contact with FUNK or with Khmer Rouge, people who supported the Khmer Rouge, and whatever I found useful or believable, I used.
Thank you for those details. When you were in Asia, did you ever travel in China and talk directly with FUNK representatives there, including Sihanouk, who was present in China?
No, I never went to China in that period. And the Chinese did not have
President, thank you. Madam Counsel, may we inquire from you how much time do you anticipate to put questions to this witness?
I think I can say off the top of my head like this, I will need 45 or 50 minutes. I do intend to use the time that has been allocated to me. I may end a little earlier, but I prefer to talk in terms of 45 or 50 minutes. I have one or two quotes to read which may take some time. Thank you, President.
President, I asked you, Council, because now is appropriate time for a short break. Hence, we will take a short break, and we shall return at 20 past 10. Mr. Schanberg, the chamber will recess for 20 minutes. Thank you.
សូមអញ្ជើញក្រោកឈរ